Hi, I'm Sarah from Terra Vita, and this video has been years in the making. It was 7 years ago when I divorced my abusive husband. And it's taken me this long to be able to share a small part of my story. When Susan and I started our YouTube channel, we wanted to help people connect the dots on their mental health journey and help them understand their trauma. But as I was creating this video, I realized I needed to do this for me. I needed to speak my truth and start telling what happened to me so that I can have greater healing in my own life. And so while my underlying motivation was to do this for others, I realized I'm doing it for me too. And so October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and so I hope you'll take a few minutes to learn more today. Did you know that it takes women an average of 7 times to leave an abusive relationship for good? In today's video, we're going to explore why don't women leave abusive relationships. I'm doing so from the point of view of someone who was in an abusive relationship for 25 years, and Susan is going to help us unpack what some of the emotions people who in these relationships could be feeling. So I'll be sharing 3 reasons why I didn't leave, in the hopes that someone who's watching this might get some more clarity for their own life. Or if you have a friend or family member who may be experiencing this, it will help you gain more understanding to what they're going through. Before we begin, I do want to point out that while 1 in 3 women experience some sort of physical violence from a partner, this also happens to men. 1 in 4 men experience domestic violence in their life. It's also important to note that minority populations, those with disabilities, and teens have even higher rates of domestic intimate partner violence. Take a few seconds to learn about that now. I will be speaking from the point of view of a woman, but I did want to acknowledge that this can happen to every kind of person. So why don't people leave? Why didn't I leave? Well, one reason is that I was constantly on an emotional roller coaster, is what I called it. As I learned later, there is a cycle of abuse, and it's a calm period, and then a rising escalation, an incident, and then a reconciliation, and then calm again. And so I experienced this many times in the 25 years of my marriage, and toward the end, it was every week. And so I remember feeling that I just longed for peace and calm and rest, and I couldn't get it because I was also always on this emotional roller coaster. I didn't know when the ball would drop next. I had to get really good at anticipating what I could do or couldn't do so that my husband wouldn't get angry. And so that was one of the reasons it was really hard for me to leave, because on this roller coaster, I didn't know which way was up. So Susan, can you maybe unpack that from that emotional standpoint for us?
So if we think about the brain and we think about Sarah being on a roller coaster, it really does describe her emotional brain sensing tremendous threat by her husband's abusive manner. It could be emotional abuse, it can be verbal abuse and physical abuse. It can even be just the threat of those things can, in the brain, set off that alarm. And once that trigger gets switched, Sarah's now in fight or flight. And in fight or flight, things feel jittery, unsteady, clenched, confusing. And that state of confusion isn't helped by the thinking brain, because earlier we talked about this is the brain, here's the emotional brain, and when triggered, the thinking brain goes offline. So the thinking brain it's the logical brain. It's no longer really in place to help process through what's really happening to me. And there's only a survival mode going on. And that's really what you're describing, Sarah. Many women don't leave because they're just stuck in survival mode, and they're bracing for the next bad thing to happen. And they are trying to overcome what just did happen. And so there's no real time in between to feel grounded and on your feet. And because there's this constant sense of being off balance, the cycle just doesn't get broken. You go from one crisis to the next crisis to the next crisis to the next crisis.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another reason that it was really difficult to leave was just plain fear. I lived in a lot of fear. I was told that if I ever left, that my life for my sons and my children would be very difficult. I was told my pets would be killed. I was told that anyone I would ever be with again would be killed. I was told that he would quit his job and work at McDonald's, so I would have no alimony or income coming from him. And so it gave me this feeling that I was trapped and I couldn't leave because, again, on that emotional roller coaster, I felt like I couldn't think straight. And then you add fear on top of it. It was difficult to think of a plan and do some planning to leave because that's what it takes. And it was really hard because I was living in that fear. Do you want to expound any more on that?
Just, trapped is a very common feeling for abused women or men, and it's very isolating because usually trauma happens when you're alone, or as a parent you have these little ones around you, but they're not adults, so you feel very alone and you feel responsible for them to try to keep the peace as much as possible. And so I just want to point out that trapped, again, it is a symptom of feeling frozen, in freeze mode, feeling trapped, feeling kind of blank on the outside, but very wound up on the inside. And Sarah and I just did a video on the freeze mode, if you want to take a look at that on our channel. But yeah, trapped is a really, it's a feeling like you have no choices. When really you do have choices, but you don't know it.
Exactly. It definitely felt that I didn't have any choice. I just had to stay. Another thing that I felt, and it was a factor in why I didn't leave, is I felt a lot of shame. This is something that I tried and worked very hard at hiding. I didn't share a lot of details or anything with my family or friends. They knew something was off, but they didn't know exactly what it was and why I couldn't go to that event, or we couldn't spend time with them at different holidays, why we left so early, why I just stayed home because my husband wanted our world to be very small and he wanted to control my world. And so there was this tremendous sense of shame of trying to hide it. We wanted to be normal like everyone else. And so I tried to decorate my house so it looked really pretty. And I put my energy into that because I knew I couldn't have this type of home life. So I tried to make the external home look good. And so I remember going to a restaurant and on numerous occasions and feeling like our family, I was acting in a play that everyone else around me was really happy and their lives were all together, and I was literally acting in a play. It felt like this isn't real. And so there was a tremendous sense of shame. If you want to tell us more about shame.
Very common, again, Sarah, very common. Abusers tend to shame their spouses. They say it's your fault. They guilt them. They blame them for everything that's going wrong. If the abuser gets upset, it's the spouse's fault, which is not true. When a person gets upset, those feelings are inside of them. It's in their yard. They have to figure that out. But abusers are experts at throwing all the responsibility for what's going on inside of them onto their spouse or their kids. So that's very common in abusive relationships. It's very hurtful. I don't know, listeners, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, that happens to me all the time. Well, I encourage you to seek some help, to talk to somebody about what's happening all the time. Somebody you can trust in confidence, will not tattletale on you to your abuser. You need a safe place. You need a place where you can tell the truth, because it is not true that it's your fault that your abuser is having bad feelings. It's their responsibility to figure out their feelings. It's your responsibility to figure out yours. It's not your responsibility to figure out their feelings.
And those are just 3 of personal reasons that I had for not leaving. Again, the whole goal of this is to add some clarity for people who might be going through it. One of the things that Susan and I determined when we started this YouTube channel was that we wanted to reach people in abusive situations and be able to help them and give them information, because information is power and it can change your life. And so there's a myriad of reasons why women and men stay in these relationships, and they're nuanced as there are individuals, right? Another reason we want to explore, and we're doing that in another video, is spiritual abuse. That also played a large part of the reason I stayed so long in my abusive marriage. And so again, like Susan said, if you think you might be experiencing this, tell a family or a friend that you can trust. Reach out to the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. When you go to their website, there's a little exit button. So if you're worried about getting caught or you're fearful, it literally looks like you're on Google. You just press that button and it takes you right there. And so that could be a helpful resource for you too. So thank you for listening to this, and I pray that you would share it with someone else who might need it. And thanks so much.